Yeah, at least.
Streaming
Well,
live
got
as
more
well?
than that. Because they got year 1, year
Is he
2,
gonna do
year
it?
3. So year 1 had about 40, 50.
Is President going to
Plus they run the identical program in Bradford as well now, in the Mustafa Mount. So Saturday they do it in Liverpool, Sunday they do it in Bradford. Yeah, same Sheikh Ibrahim and Harun. Those things.
Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, welcome to our event hosted by the Fountain Institute. Inshallah, we're honored to have Shaykh Ridhwan here with us. So today, as you know, today's event is on Islamic treatments, common mental health problems, depression, anxiety. So the tartib for today, inshallah, will be, we'll have some Quran recitation. Inshallah, then Shaykh Ridhwan will speak for about half an hour, 40 minutes. Then we'll stop for light refreshments. And inshallah, then we'll continue. We aim to finish just before Maghrib, so around 8:30, 8:35. Inshallah, we'll try to finish. There will be opportunities to ask questions, and we'll work out the best way to do it. Inshallah, we'll either get people to pose questions. We'll send you out a link where you can pose questions via our WhatsApp group or Telegram group. Okay, so the link's been sent on a WhatsApp group, and on there you can, inshallah, submit your questions. So just a couple of things for start. So inshallah, you can see this banner behind me to the left, Seeking Sukoon. So this is a local well-being organization focusing on providing religious and cultural services to improve mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. So they have a network of vetted Muslim professionals, from counselor to physiotherapists and psychotherapists, and their approach is to offer therapeutic services to help educate the community. So the details you can see, inshallah, on the banner. So aptly, they're obviously helping us in providing support for this event. So inshallah, before we start, just for those who may or may not know, so Shaykh Ridhwan is someone we've known for a long time. Alhamdulillah, he was actually the first teacher for us in Luton back in 2000, maybe 2001. So our first formal classes, we did Riyadh Saleem Hadith classes.
He's going to get offended.
No, he's controlled his laughs now.
I think it was before me.
He's the master of his laughs.
Oh yeah, alhamdulillah.
So Shaykh Ridhwan is someone who's, I'll try to keep it short, but he's studied extensively in Damascus with the leading scholars of Damascus. He's graduated from King's College in medicine, and he's obviously a consultant psychiatrist, and he's been practicing for many years. He's also does a lot of work within West London. They've set up their own Islamic school, as well as other institutes teaching the Islamic sciences. This is something that we do now for over close to 30 years now, from the beginning. So very experienced. We've known him for many years now. So inshallah, today will be of benefit. So inshallah, I'll ask Brother Atar to inshallah recite the Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ويقول الذين كفروا لولا أنزل عليه آية من ربه قل إن الله يضل من يشاء ويهدي إليه من أناب الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات طوبى لهم وحسن مآب صدق الله العظيم. And those who disbelieved say, why has a sign not been sent down to him from his Lord? Say, O Muhammad, indeed Allah leaves astray whom he wills and guides to himself whoever turns back to him. Those who have believed and whose hearts are assured by the remembrance of Allah, unquestionably by the remembrance of Allah hearts are assured. Those who have believed and done righteous deeds, a good state is theirs and a good return.
Jazakumullah khair.
So inshallah we'll start the talk now, inshallah. So we'll go till about 7:20, 7:25. Inshallah, then we'll stop for light refreshments for 10, 15 minutes. I think there's mint tea and the likes that will be served, and some pastries and the like. So inshallah we'll break for that, and then we'll resume again, inshallah.
Okay. You know the link? Is there a live translation?
Yeah, it's been transmitted.
You know the link? Is it possible to get it to my daughter somehow? Because there's quite a few people asking. Mariam, where's Mariam? Go around the back. Brother will give you the link for the... Yeah? You just have it back there.
Send it to you. Can you send the link to your missus? My link.
Just asking. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. It's a great pleasure to be back in Luton. Brothers Ansar, Anil, mashallah, who have been working here for so many years now. As they mentioned, it's really nice to see the Fountain Institute still flourishing. And as it's nice to have Sidi Uthman with us as well. And I'm glad what Brother Anil said, that Sidi Uthman was telling me in the car that he was first here teaching. But this confirms now I was the first one teaching here in the Fountain Institute. So good correction there to the history. Thank you, mashallah.
I did say football.
So alhamdulillah, yeah, it's been time. But it's obviously we know, Shaykh Thaqib has been here with the community, who's obviously a close friend of ours. So alhamdulillah, you've been in good hands. May Allah continue to give tawfiq and hidayah to all of the brothers here. So inshallah, the talk today, to be honest, this is quite a small group, so I'm happy if people want to just shout out questions. I don't know if that's okay, but to have more of an open discussion as well, be very welcome if people have any comments or questions as we're going along. feel free to put up your hands or send it through the messaging, up to you, whatever you prefer to do. But it's a type of subject where I would rather have people tell us what you're thinking and what your questions are, rather than just me talking on and on. Yeah. So feel free to, and sisters as well, feel free to raise your hands, shout out questions, or send it through the messaging, inshallah. So we're talking today about depression and anxiety, and how we can understand this in terms of Islam as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ala inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun. In more than one place in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this particular ayah, Allah says, surely upon the awliya of Allah, there is no khawf and there's no huzn. There's no khawf, which is fear, and there's no huzn, which is sadness. And it's interesting because khawf is basically anxiety, and huzn is basically depression. And anxiety and depression are the two main ways that the human beings become, the two main, what we call mood disorders in psychiatry. They're called mood disorders, right? There's only two main ones: depression and anxiety. I mean, obviously you get things like mania, but mania is actually comes out of depression, right? So there's two ways that the human being can become unwell, mentally unwell, with regard to their mood. One is depression and one is anxiety. Anxiety is about the future and depression is about the past. Because anxiety is a fear of what will happen. People are anxious, they'll be saying, they're worried, something bad is going to happen. Could be about whatever different thing they're worried about, but it's always about the future, what might happen in the future. Whereas depression, if you see a depressed person, they tend to ruminate on the past. Things that have gone wrong. I've been a bad person, I've been a bad father, I've been a bad mother, I've done this, I've done that, and the other. Things have gone wrong, right? So it's interesting that the Quran, in many ayahs, Allah mentions these two aspects, La khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun. They have no fear and they have no sadness or depression. I'm going to actually just mention some of the ayahs in the Quran that have this, just to give us a flavor of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how often it's mentioned as well in the Quran. Yeah. So unfortunately we don't have the PowerPoints, but I've got them in my hand, so I'll just bear with me and I'll read them out to you, inshallah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, says, فَمَنْ تَبِعَ هُدَايَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Whoever follows my guidance, no fear upon them, nor will they feel sadness. فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. They will have their reward with their Lord, no fear upon them, and nor do they grieve. فَلَهُ أَجْرُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. He has his reward with his Lord, and there is no fear upon him, nor does he feel sadness. لَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Again, same as the previous ayah. This one's in Baqarah. Again, Surah Al-Baqarah. فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Again, Baqarah 277. لَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. So you can say Allah is repeatedly telling us this in the Quran. Surah Al-Imran 170. Allah khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. 569. Man amana billahi wal yawmil akhir wa amila salihan fala khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. Whoever believes in Allah and does good deeds, no fear upon them, nor will they feel sadness. 6:48 آمَنَ وَأَصْلَحَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. He believed and did good, no fear upon them, nor do they feel sad. فَمَنِ اتَّقَى وَأَصْلَحَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. 7:35 Whoever has taqwa of Allah and does good, no fear upon them, nor do they feel sad. 7:49 أُدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْكُمْ وَلَا أَنْتُمْ تَحْزَنُونَ. Enter Jannah, no fear upon you, nor do you feel grief or sadness. 10:62 Allah ala inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. That's the one we started with, about the awliya of Allah. 28:7 فإذا خفت عليه فألقيه في اليم ولا تخافي ولا تحزني. This is speaking to the mother of Musa alayhi salam. When you fear for him, then throw him into the river and do not feel fear and do not feel sadness. 29:33 وقالوا لا تخف ولا تحزن إنا منجوك وأهلك إلا امرأتك تتنزل عليهم الملائكة أن لا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا. That the malaika descend upon them. These are the true believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أن لا تخافوا, you should not feel any fear, nor should you feel any grief or sadness, and have good tidings of Al-Jannah. 43:68 يا عبادي لا خوف عليكم اليوم ولا أنتم تحزنون. Oh my slaves, no fear upon you today, and nor will you feel any sadness. 46:13 إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Those who say our Lord is Allah, then they are firm, they have istiqamah, they are firm upon that. No fear upon them, neither shall they feel sadness. So these are some of the ayahs. You can see many, many ayahs where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning these aspects. So, as I said, anxiety is about the future and depression is about the past. The friends of Allah, true believers or people of very strong iman, they don't tend to feel anxiety and they don't tend to feel sadness. Now, one thing I will say at this point is that we shouldn't, this is a tendency that Muslims have. When you have a Muslim who's feeling depression or anxiety or panic, Muslim, you tend to say to them, look, just trust in Allah, do more dhikr. I think we also have to realize these can be very serious mental disorders and mental illnesses. And it's not fair, it's not fair to think if someone is suffering from one of these things, that somehow they have less iman than other people, or they don't do enough dhikr. That is also something we should be careful. And because any of us can suffer from these conditions, okay? It can happen to anyone. It's how Allah tests different people in different ways, All of us are here to be tested. وَخَلَقْنَا الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِنَبْلُوَكُمْ. Allah has created life and death to test us. We're in this world to be tested, So inevitably, there's no way that we cannot be tested in this life. That's why no one makes dua, oh Allah, don't test us. You can't make that dua because the Quran has told us, لَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. We will surely test you. Bil-khawf, with fear, anxiety, panic, right? Allah will test us with these things. Bil-khawf wal-ju'i, hunger, وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, and loss of life and health and profits and business collapsing, wealth, losing of wealth. Allah said, لَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ, with a double emphasis. Yeah? I'm sure a lot of you study Arabic over the last 20 years. You've been here with Shaykh Thaqib and everything. Yeah? لَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ. Lam al-Tawqeed and Noon al-Tawqeed. Double emphasis. We can't do justice to the Arabic when we translate to English. We will surely test you in this life. So, all of us are tested in our own ways. We make dua to Allah, make our test easy for us. Yeah, that's a dua we make our test easy for us. But we can't make a dua, don't give us a test. Make our test easy for us, Allah. Make it not a fitna for our deen and our iman. Make our iman strong. Make us strong and give us sabr when you test us. These are du'as that we make to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some of us are tested in our business, in our wealth. Some are tested in our relationships. Some are tested in different ways in our physical health. Some of us are tested in our mental health. Okay? So, one thing, don't, if someone's suffering from mental health, of course we have to remind them to, turn to Allah, have sabr, but also recognize these are things that anyone can be afflicted with. Yeah? The best of us, the worst of us. Even the Prophet ﷺ had an affliction, of a mental kind at one time. And most of you may be aware, that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down Jibreel alayhi salam and gave us Surah Al-Falaq and An-Nas. Yeah? Because why? Someone had done some magic on him and it affected him mentally. He's affected him mentally. That's just a fact. Yeah? And then Surah Al-Falaq and An-Nas were revealed, the great protection, and then he became completely fine. So, everyone has a breaking point. And people are all different in that, People have different breaking points. Some people have a stronger constitution, stronger personality. Some people have a weaker constitution, weaker personality. Part of it is genetic, what sort of character, personality, etc. you have. Your upbringing is so important in that. Your childhood, your early childhood is so important. If you grew up in a loving, nurturing household from an early age, you're going to be more resilient. If you grew up in a very difficult, so it's not you can't blame people for their childhood, People have gone through difficult childhood, they're going to be more vulnerable. So, but everyone, even the strongest person, in my career, I've met some patients that were in Guantanamo Bay. It was just when I was working in Harrow. I had a couple of Muslims patients who had been in Guantanamo Bay, and they were broken. They had complete breakdown, going through torture, things like that. So, may Allah protect us, But it is also true that the stronger your iman, the stronger your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more resilience you will have. That is another source of resilience to mental disorder. Yeah? Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun. So we're going to talk a bit today about how does a strong iman help you to be resilient against these things? And we'll also talk about people who suffer from some of these, what can be the type of cures that they can look for, both in Islam and anything. What does Islam say about medications, psychological therapy, things like that? We'll talk about these things, inshallah. Yeah, sure, yeah, go ahead.
Could you also argue that sort of an element of like sadness or fear is normal, like it's a normal reaction to certain situations, but actually at its other extreme, when it comes to depression, anxiety can become sort of a problem. But actually, if you've lost a loved one, it's quite normal to feel sad.
Of course, yeah, very good point. Yeah, if people heard the sister, really good point. That obviously sadness and anxiety are also normal emotions that all of us feel. It's only when they become extreme that we class them as a mental disorder. And the way in the West, the way mental disorders are classified is so broad that probably all of us are probably suffering from mental disorder right now. So if you look at definition of, say, mild depression, what they call mild depression, I'm sure Sidi Usman probably hasn't experienced that. Sorry, I shouldn't make jokes there. But yeah, no, I mean, so that's a good point. Where's the borderline between just normal, if someone's afflicted by some difficulties, of course we're going to find that a little bit difficult. We might feel a bit sad. If there's something going on, you might feel a bit anxious, something potentially harmful, in front of you. So that is normal. Now, having said that, obviously, there are people, not myself, but people of very strong iman that transcend that as well. They don't feel fear and anxiety because they have such a strong tawakkul in Allah, which we'll talk about, But for most of us, obviously, we're all on different spectrum, And the stronger our iman, the stronger our trust in Allah, the less anxiety we'll feel about things that could potentially happen. I mean, as Muslims, all of us know it's in the hands of Allah. All of us know it's a decree of Allah. Even if you tell the most simplest Muslim, you don't have to worry about this thing, it's in the hand of Allah. Of course, they believe that, but knowing something from a belief point of view is different from iman and experience point of view. Yeah? Like, I've got relatives, close relatives, they suffer from depression, anxiety. You say to them, of course, no point being depressed. What's in the past is qadar Allah. As the Prophet ﷺ said, don't think about, don't ruminate on the past. The Prophet ﷺ told us, we're going to come to this hadith later on, very important hadith, when we talk about psychological therapy. The Prophet ﷺ said, La taqulu law. You shouldn't say if only this, if only I did this, or if only this didn't happen. Because what's in the past, he said, say, qulu qadar Allah. Just say Allah, whatever happened was what Allah had decreed. There's no point me feeling sad or depressed about what's happened in the past. Yeah? So you can remind Muslims, and they will acknowledge that, they know that it's true, but they still might feel that heaviness, the sadness, the depression. And this is where what we're talking about is iman. Iman is not a simple formula of belief. Yeah, it's not just a simple, my aqidah. My aqidah tells me everything in the past is qadar Allah. But why do I still feel sad and depressed? Right? Iman is something else. Iman is only something that can come about by making an effort and a striving to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah? It's a practical thing. Yeah? Iman is something you have to work on practically. And how do you do that? By doing ibadat. Number one, don't do anything haram. In tajtanibu kaba'ira ma tunhawna anhu nukaffir ankum sayyi'atikum. If you avoid the kaba'ir, the big things that Allah has made haram, the big things that are the kaba'ir, you know what I mean by that, yeah? Major sins. Because none of us can avoid all the minor sins, that's small, but the major sins we have to stop ourselves. So the first step on strengthening one's iman, I'm sure you've all studied, the tasawwuf and tazkiyah. Yeah? The first step is to stop haram, the kaba'ir. Without that, you can't really progress in your iman if you're committing major sins. And the major sins that are most problematic for most of us are the ones of the tongue. Because the other major sins, most of us, I would estimate in this room, you're not going to be, you're not going to go to the pub after the dars and have a pint. Yeah, most of us are not going to do those things like drinking alcohol, inshallah, committing zina, those other major sins. Yeah, most generally people in this room practicing Muslim, we're alhamdulillah. But the kaba'ir of the tongue are the ones that we have to be really careful of. Yeah? Lying, backbiting, These are kaba'ir, these are major sins. They're not small things, yeah? Otherwise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wouldn't have said in the Quran, it's like eating the flesh of your dead brother. So that's the first step, to increasing the iman. And then the ibadat come in, Once we've make sure you're within the boundaries of Allah from the haram. Then to increase the iman, you do the good deeds, obviously starting with the fard. Yeah. ما تقرب إلي عبدي بشيء أحب إلي مما افترضته عليه. My slave does not come closer to me with anything more beloved than what I have made fard upon him. ولا يزال يتقرب إلي بالنوافل حتى أحبه. Then he will continue coming more and more closer to me by doing extra optional nawafil. This is your dhikr, your awrad, your Quran, your nafal prayers, your nafal fasting, yeah, your umrah, all of these things, sadaqah. Hatta uhibba, until I love him. And that's what we're talking about. That strong iman. That's what that will ultimately be a very strong protection against these type of depression and anxiety. But of course, that's a very, very high level, and most of us should we work on our iman, and the stronger our iman will become, the less we'll be prone to these type of anxieties and depressions. Does that make sense?
These are really, I think, suppose preventative measures one can take beforehand, before any calamity comes along. But what does one do when they're in the calamity? They haven't got the habitual habit of worship. What would you then advise them at that moment in order to sort of limit the damage?
People who are in a sort of, say, depression, you mean, or something like that, or
Yeah.
or in a calamity like a.
The depression will become affected of what has happened, like a car accident or someone being poorly.
Yeah.
I suppose they'll have trauma from that. But at that very moment in time,
Mm.
what would you advise them in order to sort of limit the damage? Because obviously,
Yeah.
it can leave a long-lasting damage, and they haven't had that habit, habitual habit of worship in order to sort of protect themselves.
So you mean when they're actually facing like a real difficulty, a calamity of some sort?
Like
Yeah.
the equivalent of an antibiotic at that moment in time.
Yeah. I mean, this is a really good point, inshallah. And obviously, we will probably cover some of this stuff again, but I think this is one of the things I'll talk about a bit later. The importance of jama'ah within our deen, and the importance of helping one another. Yeah. If you look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, for example, Surah Al-Asr, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Except those who believe and do good works, and they help one another to truth, and they help one another to sabr. A tawasul cannot be done by yourself. You can't do that by yourself. Tawasul bis-sabr. It means more than one person. We're together as a community. This is so important. If we don't help each other to remind each other to have sabr, tawasul bis-sabr. They remind each other to have sabr in times of afflictions and calamities. In the past, if you think most people before the modern age, before modernity and urbanization, now everyone lives in cities, for thousands of years before the Industrial Revolution, this is only 200 years ago, for thousands of years, most people lived in villages, small communities. Even those that lived in towns or cities, they would tend to be in their communities. And people would, it's a very powerful thing, when someone suffers an affliction, people would gather, your whole community gathers around. They come to your house, they say, don't worry, have sabr, remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, it's not just Muslims, even Christians, other religious groups just had the same thing. They used to have the same thing, you know? And it's very powerful because everyone at one time or another is going to have some sort of calamity. But if you've got your whole community gathering around, coming to your home, reminding you, look, you know, you're going through, but we're all here for you. You know, we're here to support you. This is powerful, and this is how people used to get through these type of things and keep their faith strong. Because these are the things people can lose their faith, you know? So this is really important, I think. And it's a big issue, big problem that people are thinking about. How, you know, there's a breakdown of communities that we're living through now. You know, communities have broken down. There are no communities now. People are very solitary. This is one of the major causes of mental disorder now, depression. I was going to touch upon later on, is being isolated. In the West, you know, which are more advanced, they're advanced in mental illness as well. The more advanced they're becoming, the more mental disorders are coming about, you know. So, for example, in London now, they do this household survey every few years, yeah. The last one I heard, they said about, I think it was either a quarter or 1/3 of people are living in single person household, they call it. Single person household. So a phenomenal amount of people living by themselves. It's not just elderly people anymore, just elderly, you know, it used to be like the person, his wife died or his husband died, they're left all alone. It's even younger, a lot of younger people now. It's a single person household. People are very isolated now, you know, and there's no communities. So it's a big problem. I mean, more even for non-Muslims, but even for Muslims, it's such a massive problem now. So I'm not going to come here and say I got the answer for this. This is a thing a lot of people are thinking about. You know, people who had better brains than me are thinking about this. What we're going to do? People are trying to make efforts. How do we get a community feeling? How do we get communities? It's worse in London, I think. Maybe in Luton it's not so. I don't know. It's a bit less. You've still got maybe something, but it's afflicting everywhere. You know, it's a result of urbanization and modernization. And just modern life. Now everyone's, you know, you've got your screen. You don't need to have human interaction anymore because people are just kept entertained, right? We're all kept entertained with our TVs or our computers or our internet. Like back in the day when me and Uthman were young, we didn't have internet, you know, we didn't have smartphones. Sorry to reveal your age there. We didn't even have smartphones. You probably can't imagine that, right? Some of you guys. We had to go and meet each other. We were so bored, right? You know, you're so bored, you're literally bored. Like there was TV, like 4 channels, yeah? And most of the time showing really boring stuff. Like you'll be like waiting a whole week to watch something interesting on TV. You know, like Star Trek, for example. I don't know what you used to watch, man. Some probably Bollywood movie or something. Like you have to wait a long time, like. So we had to go and just meet people, go and hang out together. So there was still at that time, even though the thing was breaking down, there was still, you know, that's why they used to say entertain guests, you know, it's literally called entertainment. You go to you'd always go to your friend's house or your cousins or your relatives. Like I remember my parents, they used to go, we would either be one uncle or another auntie, you know, you go, you visit, and it's called, we entertain our guests. That's your entertainment, you know, speaking to other human beings. Now, we don't need to because we've got the entertainment 24/7. Yeah? There's no easy answer to this. It's from Shaitan. This is from Shaitan because what Shaitan wanted to do, he wants to destroy the human being. He wants to destroy the human being. And now we're seeing skyrocketing mental illness, right? Skyrocketing.
Shaykh, do you think,
Yeah.
do you think prior to even the onset of the age of the screen, there was this kind of modernity was already taking hold in the sense that our values had started to change, our intentionality for the future had changed. So we were kind of moving away from a family structure. And I personally think immigration and moving into an individualistic society where, you know, it's 2.5 children and progress is financial and a home and worldly sort of means, that was already kind of permeating in our societies anyway. So
Definitely, yeah.
That's only been magnified now with
Yeah,
what's going on with the
sure,
screen.
definitely, 100%. I think 100%, yeah. So as you said, individualism is something that has been identified as a peculiar thing to Western societies, but now we're all becoming Westernized, and Western civilization is basically globalized. So everyone's getting this individualism. That's part of it. Urbanization, like we said, was part of it. You know, people being uprooted from traditional communities. But yeah, I think now with this endless entertainment around us, it's just gone to the next level. You know, of human beings becoming just isolated individuals. And as I said, I mean, this is what Shaitan wants all along. You know, to break the human being, to strip away that thing that gave the honor to the human being. You know. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from all of that. Shall I take some questions, more questions, or shall I try to get on to... Because I think we'll probably cover a lot of stuff. So let me carry on with my slides, and then after that break, we'll take questions maybe. That would probably be good, yeah. Because a lot of the stuff, people are really good things you're bringing up, but I'm going to be covering a lot of it anyway. So if maybe we'll go through a few more of the slides, and then maybe after the break, we'll come back to the written questions as well, inshallah. Okay, so when we talk about treatment for things like depression, I'm going to talk about depression first, yeah? And anxiety as well. What does Islam think about psychological therapies? Yeah. So people may have heard of things like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, etc. You can go to psychologists. Does it work? Is it worth going for it? Does it help? Counseling, things like that. Yeah. The short and now recently mindfulness has become quite fashionable. Yeah, in the last few years. So short answer is yes. These things can be quite useful. Yeah, they can be quite useful.
Just before we go into that, when I ask a question in regards to what you just
Yeah.
regarding the technology issue, on the flip side of that, you also have, especially young people, the exposure to, as we know, conflicts, genocide that happen across the world, where they end up becoming desensitized to some of these issues. So when they're exposed to an abundance of mass media, and there's so much cognitive load that's going on in that process, my question essentially is, how do you resensitize them almost to what's going on?
Yeah, I know, it's a brilliant point. You basically, it's very difficult to, and like me personally, I don't look at any of those images, or like this whole conflict that's going on in Gaza, for example. I personally will not look at any of these images on the news media, social media, or anywhere, because I think it's very destructive to the soul and makes us feel very powerless as well. I've had this discussion with some of my friends, students as well. There's one brother saying to me, for example, but this is to help the Palestinians. It's good to spread this, on your social media to all your contacts. And I was thinking, okay, well, fair enough. How is it making you feel? Because he was doing this, day in, day out. He said, I've been feeling really depressed and miserable all the time recently. It was affecting him in a big way. Of course it would. And I think for the younger you are, the more the impact, the more the negative impact. So the general rule should be, the younger you are, the less you should be exposed to screens generally, but especially those type of things. Because the younger people are, the more their brains are still developing as well. So yeah, no, so it's a good point, a very good point. Desensitization is one massive part of it, but I think it's also has other horrible, like, they're making Muslims just feel, I mean, they're showing Muslims, they're showing us our brothers and sisters being killed. And they're showing us these images and making us feel what ultimately are we going to feel about that, We're still here. We're going to feel powerless. We're going to feel, that type of thing. I mean, in the past, if people saw these things, they would get PTSD. In the past, if you saw like a horrific, like we were just talking in the car, me and Sidi Uthman, when we were young, we saw a car accident of a woman, car hit her and she flied over the bonnet and you can see Sidi Uthman's got some PTSD from that, because still remembers it vividly. But no, I mean, seriously, if you see, I mean, people in the past, if you see like a horrific thing, like kids being blown up, or that would scar someone and give them post-traumatic stress disorder probably for the rest of their life. Just seeing one image like that in real life. But now you're bombarded with these images and you're just it must be having an effect on the soul. Anyway, inshallah, so good point, Jazakumullah khair. So CBT, psychological therapies, I mean, they can be quite useful, okay? However, having said that, from my experience, I mean, I've been in psychiatry now for 25 years plus. I've seen thousands and thousands of patients going through therapy and things like that. It's my day job. It can help, yeah? It can, there's a certain, I think, a small proportion of people that can really help. What we call psychologically minded people, or, they can learn certain techniques to help them restructure their negative thoughts, things like that, for example. However, the vast majority, I think, the benefit from the therapy seems to be while they're having therapy. And when the therapy finishes, which inevitably it has to at some point or another, because the NHS is not going to give you unlimited therapy. And if you're paying for it, unless you're very rich, you're not going to be able to pay for therapy for years and years. So your therapy is going to end. Normally when the therapy ends, you see a lot of people then sooner or later, they revert back to their depression or anxiety or whatever it was. Some more recent studies have shown that the main benefit of therapy is really just having that one-to-one time with someone to talk to. And even if you just had an untrained person, like a person with like common sense, like a friend, and you have that weekly 1 hour talking about your problems and problem solving, you probably just get just as much benefit as if you go through this highly specialized CBT, psychological therapy. I'm probably saying things that are a little bit controversial. Some of you may be psychologists or things like that. I'm not trying to put anyone down or put your profession down. I mean, many psychologists are very highly trained, and some are very good. Yeah, so I'm not trying to rubbish anything, but that's just a fact. Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So in a lot of the psychological therapies,
Yeah.
etc., essentially they're teaching someone to really kind of go over life with a fine-tooth comb. And I sometimes wonder as to the benefit of that, because like you said, the therapy has to stop. It won't go forever. And what good is it to teach a person that level of feeling and experience, even if it's through mindfulness, for example, check in with your body, your mind, your ear, your toe, what benefit is there in making somebody so sensitive? Yes, it might be beneficial in the parameters of therapy, but do you think in the long term, maybe that's controversial, in the long term it's actually detrimental?
That's an interesting point, to be honest. Yeah, to sensitize people psychologically, you mean, in that sense. I think obviously the point of the therapies are normally to either restructure your ways of thinking, I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of good common sense stuff in therapies. But what I'm trying to say is that normal common sense can normally be enough. So I think the therapists are doing a good job. I'm not saying they're doing a bad job. They're doing a good job, but a lot of the best stuff they do is like, you could say common sense. Like, for example, if someone's depressed, you're going to do behavioral activation, right? So you want to get them out, go to the gym, go for a walk, do some activity every day that will lift your mood. You know, that's a brilliant thing to do, but it's a common sense thing as well. That's what I'm saying. So I'm not, I don't want to, yeah. But there are some aspects, I think, what you may be alluding to, there's some types of therapy. There's many different types of therapy, but the sort of psychoanalytic, psychodynamic type, where they start analyzing your childhood and they go deep into things, in your unconscious, subconscious, whatever you call it. And they're normally much longer term, so it has to be at least a year you're in that type of therapy. I think maybe you're alluding to that type that couldn't, and a lot of people find it makes them worse when they start going into talking about all their childhood traumas and things like that. So I think there is a fine line there. Yeah. Sorry, at the back, someone?
I was just going to say, I think it's mainly used during crisis points.
Yeah.
When people are going through a really tough time. So when it's like that crisis point, I think that's when it's mainly sort of advised by the doctor.
I mean, it shouldn't be, but in practice, because probably resources are limited in the NHS, it's only when you're really desperate they'll but I mean, CBT is designed to be for anyone suffering from depression or anxiety.
Just in my experience, with friends and family, I found that it's given to them when things have gone a bit further.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so generally, I mean, I can share with you an anecdotal experience I had when I was working in Broadmoor High Security Hospital, which is, there's only 3 high secure hospitals in the UK. And basically in these hospitals, you have the most very, very dangerous people with mental disorders, very, very dangerous as well at the same time. About 20 years ago, the UK government had this bright idea that they want to put really psychopaths and all these sex offenders and multiple serial killers, they call them psychopaths. They want to lock them up in these mental institutions and give them intensive psychotherapy in an attempt to cure them. So they open up all these, they call them DSPD, dangerous and severe personality disorder units. And one of them was in Broadmoor. There was a few around the country. And I had the unfortunate pleasure, or not very pleasurable experience, of working in that place for about a year or something. I was there as a junior doctor. And so I met some of the darkest people I've ever met. And anyway, the point was, these guys were having the top. There was, extremely well-funded, a brand new shiny building built by the government. Millions of pounds were put into this program. They had all the top psychologists coming in, big PhDs, doctorates, and they were coming and they were giving therapy to these people very intensively. And this therapy went on for 5 years. They didn't notice much improvement. 10 years. My consultant I was working with there, he'd worked there for donkey's years. He was telling me, I think they went up to 15 years. 15 years. And they still had no change with these people. The results were terrible. These people just don't change. It's a bit different to depression and anxiety, so I shouldn't really be talking about this, but it's just an interesting anecdote about how therapies, these were very highly trained psychologists and everything. After 15 years, they shut them down. They shut down all those units. Doesn't work. Anyway, having said all of that, what I was going to get to is, what's the problem with psychological therapies? From an Islamic point of view, I think psychological therapy can really work, but you have to have the faith dimension to it. You have to have the faith dimension. So we need Islamic psychotherapy. We need Islamic CBT. And that can be very, very powerful, you know. And there are some people, I think, working on this field at the moment, but, it's not so developed right now. I'll tell you why. Because if you don't have faith, if you're not a person of faith, now you can extend that from Muslim to Christian. As long as you have a faith, you believe in the akhirah, you believe in a judgment, a day of judgment, you do not need to be depressed or anxious. That's the reality. This is why the awliya of Allah, they don't feel depressed or anxious, because they so strongly believe in the day of judgment is imminent. Yeah? The day of judgment is imminent. Well, all rights will be wronged. There'll be no sadness or grief. There's a famous hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell the malaika, go and find the one human being that had the worst life in this world. The one human being from all the billions of human beings that ever lived, who had the most trauma, the worst, everything. Can you imagine? It's not going to be any of us. I very much doubt it'll be any of us. Inshallah, it won't be any of us. The malaika will go and find that one person. Yeah? And that one, Allah will say, put that person for one moment into Jannah. The person will be put for one moment into Jannah and taken out. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to that person, have you ever experienced any sorrow? And the person will say, Wallahi, never. Wallahi, nothing. Yeah, so that's the reality. How strong we believe or not is upon our iman. But that is reality. So the Islamic psychotherapy, if we can bring in these aspects, and we'll mention some of the hadith around this as well, it can be extremely powerful. But if you're an atheist, like you're a psychologist, trained in the university here, at the end of the day, you can give people mindfulness, you can give them CBT. But ultimately, are you yourself a happy person? Are you yourself free of depression and anxiety? Look at the reality of it. Yes, you can do mindfulness. And to be fair, those people who go really deep into mindfulness is helpful. It's a helpful thing to clear your mind and focus on the present. But when you're faced with real adversity and calamities like we talked about, it's not gonna hold. That type of cognitive behavioral thing is just not gonna hold in that type of situation. Yeah. I had this in my slide. This guy. Anyone recognize this guy? I don't know if you can see him clearly from there. Nietzsche. His name is Nietzsche. Yeah, you probably recognize the name Nietzsche. Who was Nietzsche? Nietzsche is considered one of the great philosophers, of the basically the end of the Enlightenment, or he's one of the later Enlightenment philosophers. German. He's I think he's associated with the existential school, etc. He's the one who coined the idea of nihilism. Yeah. This guy suffered from severe depression throughout his life. Yeah? Severe depression throughout his life. And just one example, who's a famous person. He's got all the philosophy, he's got everything, but he's suffering from severe depression. So it's not helped him, all that philosophy. Yeah. If we look at things like mindfulness now that are becoming more sort of fashionable, and like I said, it's actually quite useful if you're a Muslim. I do recommend mindfulness, but as a step towards a type of contemplation and dhikr, right? As a step, it helps you to focus your mind, etc. This was an email that was sent around at my work by the psychologist, the head psychologist. So they have this weekly sort of thing. They call it psychology nugget for the week, you know. So this is psychology nugget number 5, and it's called radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is the ability to accept situations that are outside of your control without judgment in an attempt to reduce suffering. It is about acknowledging that everything has a cause and life can be worth living even with painful events occurring. Radical acceptance is based on the idea that our attachment to pain is what causes suffering, and so non-attachment is the key to non-suffering. Rejecting reality does not change reality. Changing reality involves first accepting it, etc., etc. You get the idea, right? Now, radical acceptance is a buzzword now, right? Because it's come from Buddhism. Yeah, and Buddhism is fashionable. Mindfulness is sort of come out of Buddhism as well. But the Muslims always had that, right? Acceptance. We accept well, I mentioned the hadith already. Yeah, we accept the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's funny, when I was in university, in my master's, when they talk about Muslims, they call it, when they talk about Muslims, they call it something else. What do they call it? I forgot. Anyone help me? They don't call it acceptance, they call it, sorry? It's similar to blind belief. There's a specific word they always use for when it comes to Muslims who like believe in qadar. Not fatalist, not fatalism. Something like that though. It's sort of like a derogatory thing. Like, you know, the Muslims, they believe in like the British used to say, in the time of British Raj, these Muslims, they believe in kismet, like they're fatalist, or I think it might be fatalist or a different term. Right? Why? Because they believe in everything is destiny. That makes them weak. Right? Not spiritual bypass, no. It's another. It'll come back to me later, inshallah. But when it comes to the Buddhism, it's a good thing. Acceptance, radical acceptance. Yeah? But it's exactly the same thing. The only difference is we've actually got a faith to base it on. We've actually got a reality to base this on, our acceptance. They've got nothing to base it on apart from just a cognitive way of thinking. Okay, I choose to accept, right? But in reality, you're not going to be able to accept. Yeah? When something really bad happens, you're not going to have that depth of faith to give you that acceptance, right? So that's about. So we need. Therapy is good. Therapy is important. People do need it when they're suffering, going through difficulties. We'll take the break now. Okay, inshallah, we can take the break now. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala sayyidina Muhammad al-Mustafa. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. The brothers are just indicated to take a break now, inshallah.
So we'll break for about 10 minutes, stretch the legs, inshallah, and then we'll...
Sorry, man, I'm trying my best not to say things too much.
الشيخ مصطفى
Nee, we hebben een gedaan. Dad, we should go sit. Master, come here.
touch me.
Come here. Taha, come this way. Muhammad's in here. Muhammad, why did you leave it? Hold it.
Stop.
No, Dad.
Use this.
Oh my God, you are hectic. No, put it on. Where are you doing this one? Leave it.
This one's it's fine.
Leave it.
Use the mic.
No, I'm not holding it. This one's there. Stop. Muhammad. So you say Allah.
اللهم صل وسلم
اللهم صل
وسلم وبارك على
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله.
صلى الله عليه وسلم.
حب النبي والآل ديني ومذهبي حقا ويقيني. حب النبي والآل ديني ومذهبي حقا ويقيني. حب النبي والآل ديني ومذهبي حقا ويقيني. وعندتي في كل حين يا عيني دوما فإني لا أخاف. فالشمس بعد من ضياء والبدر نوع من سلام. فالشمس بعد من ضياء والبدر نوع من سلام. والكل في معناه داو لم يدركوا ذاك المقام. حب النبي والآل ديني ومذهبي حقا ويقيني. حب النبي والآل ديني ومذهبي حقا ويقيني. وعمدتي في كل حين يا عيني دوما فإني لا أخاف. وقد زبان حولي وزاد همي وذهولي. الله قد زبان حولي وزاد همي وذهولي. لازم بمدح الرسول شوفكم من كل الصغار. حب النبي والآل ديني ومذهبي حقا ويقيني. حب النبي والآل ديني ومذهبي حقا ويقيني. وعمدتي في كل حين يا عيني دوما فإني من البيت الحرام حب النبي والآل دين ومذهبي حقا ويقين حب النبي والآل دين ومذهبي حقا ويقين وعمدتي في كل حين يا عيني دوما فإني لا أرضى من روح الحب إشراق مسكين يا زاد القوم لكل واحد من روح الحب إشراق مسكين يا زاد القوم لكل واحد حسن المحمود لا شيء يحيي أزكى الصلاة عليه والسلام حب النبي والآل دين ومذهبي حقا ويقين حب النبي والآل دين ومذهبي حقا ويقين.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله. جئت والشاعر ضامي طالب جيا القوافي كيف بمدح محمد كيف بوصف مقام بين ربه وبين سر مضمر وخافي بين كفه وكفاي القوافي على ما جئت والشاعر ضامي طالب جيال قوافي كيف بمدح محمد كيف بوصف مقام بين ربه وبين سر مضمر وخافي بين كفه وكسفاي القوافي على ما أدعجل عين يا سيدي أبيض الخاد صافي يشرق الكون كله لتفت بابتسامة كمل الله صفاته وارزق الحسن وفي جماله جلاله في جلاله وسما جئت والشاعر الضامي طالب جيال قوافي كيف بمدح محمد كيف بوصف مقام بين ربه وبين سر مضمر وخفي بين كسفه وكسفاي القوافي علامة عقب سود الليالي والسنين العجافي فرج الله محمد بلغها قول مرامة يبتدي ما حبا كلم الله يا جافي ينشر الدين الرحمة وعددا والكرامة جئت والشاعر ضامي طالب جيال قوافي كيف بمدح محمد كيف بوصف مقام بين ربه وبين سر مضمر وخافي بين كتفه وكتفاي القوافي علامة رب حلي يا حباب اللعب الغمامة إن بقت لي حياتي فاسأل الله عوافي وإن دنا الموت مني فاسأل الله سلامة منتبي بس أزورا وحدتي باعتكافي جئت والشاعر ضامي طالب جيال قوافي كيف بمدح محمد كيف بوصف مقام بين ربه وبين سر مضمر وخفي بين كتفه وكتفاي القافي علامة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. Inshallah, so just to continue, just quite a few questions, and I think there's some online as well, and I can see people here have things as well to say and questions. So what I'm thinking is, if you let me speak maybe for just 20 minutes or so, and then we'll leave plenty of time. We need to be finishing by about 8:40, 8:45. So maybe if I speak until about 8:20 or so, and then we'll leave the rest of time for question and discussion, inshallah. Be more important to answer what what's on people's mind and everything. So I'll say a few things that I wanted to say, inshallah, around this topic. One of the most, I think, important therapy that we can give ourselves is regular recitation of Quran. That's definitely true, okay? The Quran describes itself as a shifa. Yeah? There's two things that are mentioned in the Quran that are shifa. One is honey, and one is the Quran itself is a shifa. Shifa ma fi sudur, it's a shifa for what is in the hearts, in the chest. So the honey is a shifa for our physical health, and the Quran is a shifa for us as well. Important thing when you recite Quran, you must recite with the meaning. Yeah, you must recite with the meaning in the English if you don't understand Arabic. Because why? The Quran is a guidance. Yeah? Hudan lil muttaqeen. The Quran is a guidance for the believers. It's not, the Quran is not revealed just to be recited without meaning, without understanding. I know it's very common for us to just recite the Quran in Arabic without understanding. And, there's reward to do that, and there's a great barakah to do that. But the whole message of the Quran is a message. It's a huda, it's a guidance, it's a guidebook. It's our guidebook for our lives that's given to us by Allah. And we can't take the guidance if we don't understand what we're reciting. Yeah, so you recite the Quran in the Arabic, but have the English next to it. And then read the English. I used to live with a doctor when I was a medical student. This doctor was from Pakistan. He was a surgeon, one of the most outstanding surgeons I've ever met. MashaAllah, he's from Pakistan. But he had this philosophy that for us, nowadays you have specialist cardiac, neurosurgeon, orthopedic. His philosophy, to be a true surgeon, you have to master all of them. So he had literally done cardiothoracic surgery, orthopedic surgery. He'd come there to King's College to do neurosurgery specifically, 2 years to master neurosurgery. So you can imagine such a high level in terms of his, worldly excellence in his profession and everything. One thing I noticed about this, he's a very humble brother, mashallah, as well, but, he, every morning, imagine how busy this person is. Surgeons are one of the most busiest people anyway, but someone, with doing so much. Every morning, when he's getting ready for work, he would have the Quran playing in English, So every morning, about 15, 20 minutes, because I would be overhearing from my room, he would have the Quran, I think it was Arabic and English or just English, I can't remember. And he would listen to that while he's getting ready, he's listening, and then he goes and does his. So he's got his Quran for the day, his message. It's a message. It's a message for us. It's a guidance, it's a guidebook. And why this is so important? Because the Quran is continuously reminding us of things like the hereafter, the day of judgment, how short this life is, etc., etc. And these are very important in what we're talking about, this Islamic psychology or this Islamic therapy. Yeah? So, for example, the Quran says, وَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَوَكِّلِينَ. When you decide on something, then put your trust in Allah. Allah loves those who put their trust in Him. So I'm not going to go through all the many ayahs. I have them here, all the ayahs of Quran that are to do with trusting in Allah. Yeah, tawakkul ala Allah. I think I've got about at least 30 different ayahs here, yeah? But the point is, when we're listening to the Quran or we're reading the Quran and understanding it, we're getting this message, to trust in Allah. If you put your trust in Allah, Allah is the best person to put your trust in, and so on. This will help us to decrease our anxiety levels. Yeah? Because remember, anxiety is about being worried about what might happen. But if you trust in Allah, your anxiety levels are going to go down. And then coming on to that hadith that I mentioned earlier, the Prophet ﷺ, it's in Sahih, it's in Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-mu'min al-qawi khayrun wa ahabbu ila Allahi min al-mu'min al-da'if. The strong believer is more beloved to Allah than the weak believer. Yeah. وَفِي كُلٍّ خَيْرٍ. However, in both the strong and the weak believer, there is good. Yeah. Some of us are stronger than others, some are weaker than others. And Allah loves the strong believer, but in all of them there are good. احرص على ما ينفعك واستعن بالله. Be quick, be energetic to gain that what benefits you, and seek help from Allah. Wala ta'jiz, don't be weak. This is, be strong as believers, go out there, do what you need to do. Get what we need to do. Don't be weak. Trust in Allah. وَإِنْ أَصَابَكَ شَيْءٌ فَلَا تَقُلْ لَوْ إِنِّي فَعَلْتُ كَذَا كَذَا. If something happens to you, something bad happens to you, don't say, oh, if only I done so and so, this could have happened, that could have happened. وَلَكِنْ قُلْ قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ وَمَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. Just simply say Allah decreed it, and whatever He willed happened. فَإِنَّ لَوْ تَفْتَحُ عَمَلَ الشَّيْطَانِ. The low, the if opens up the playground of shaitan. Yeah, so this is from shaitan, making you say, if only I did, if only. That's from shaitan, because he wants to make you despair. Yeah, remember, despair is from shaitan, yes. And that's generally what the depressed person will go through, despair. Right? Because they will just be like, there's no point, I've totally messed up, I can't do anything, it's not even worth me praying. This is from shaitan. So this is how the Prophet ﷺ is trying to make you strong, Go out there, do what you need to do. If something bad happens, we say, Qadar Allah ma sha'a fa'ala, move on. Move on, don't dwell. What is depression? As we said, nowadays, if we go into the sort of Western system of mental disorder, probably everyone here suffers from something or another, because it's so wide, mild depression, this, that, and the other. But the Muslim physicians, they recognize depression as a physical illness, like severe, what we call clinical depression. In the past, it was called melancholia. And the Muslim physicians, they also recognized it, But when someone gets really severely clinically depressed, it becomes like a physical illness, And it does require treatment, And so the Muslim doctors in the past, they wrote extensively on this subject. And the Muslims generally got their knowledge of medicine from the Greeks. This is why Islamic medicine is called Unani medicine, because it was taken from the Greeks. And the Greeks also classified severe depression as a physical illness, like there's some imbalance in the brain or in the body that is causing someone to be severely depressed. So when someone's got to that stage, we do have to give them some physical treatments or some type of treatments. We can't just say to them, oh, snap out of it, stop being, stop being depressed, stop being like, It can become a proper serious illness. And some of the best treatments that I believe for these type of people, and also preventative as well. One of them, and this is not something that the doctor will tell you or the psychiatrist will tell you. This is from traditional wisdom, even though they are now catching up with some of these traditional wisdoms. Yeah, one of the things that the traditional wisdom is to prevent melancholia: stay physically and mentally active. Physically and mentally active. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created our body, physical body, to be moving and doing things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created our mind and our brain to be thinking and active. Yeah? Trust me, I guarantee you, if any of us just follow this principle, physically and mentally active, you won't fall into severe depression or anything like that. Yeah? Because I'll give you an example. In the old days, even in the West, in England, they used to have these noble aristocracy, and the aristocracy basically they believed it was an illness of the rich aristocracy, depression, clinical melancholia, Why? Because the aristocrats, they believed it was beneath them to work, physical labor. So often there were people of what they call people of leisure. Yeah, they got loads of money, they're rich. Yeah, but they just want to spend their time idly. They think it's below them to be actually like trading or doing business and things like that. That was back in those days. So this was a recognized illness in some of these people. They would fall into melancholia, right? They just become severely depressed. So I think if you look at a lot of cases of this clinical depression, you'll notice that the people who fall into that, either they were, sometimes people happen when they retire. Yeah, after they retire, suddenly, a lot of us think, I can't wait till I retire when I'm 60 or 65. And your whole life you're working hard till the day you retire. And the very next day you're sitting in your house thinking, what shall I do next? Right? You've got nothing to do. Especially because your whole life has been about your work, especially if you're British, right? This is the English person's problem. Their life is their work, isn't it? I said Uthman knows. Yeah? It's about a lot of those type people. Like, their life is their work. They don't have anything like, one of the things, there was a Sheikh Mustafa Badawi. Some of you may have heard of him from Medina. When we met him back in the day when we were studying, he said, because he worked in England for a few years, but he lives in Medina. He's a psychiatrist as well. He was saying, the English people, one thing about them, they're very boring. They're extremely boring people. That was his verdict on the English people. They're like, life is work, work is life. They do 9 to 5 to 7 to 8, whatever. The day they retire, they're like, okay, what do I do next? Yeah. So, in other words, take time to develop hobbies, right? Things that will keep you active, physically active. Sports, walking, trekking, whatever. You need to work, you need to do this, work on this. All of us need to. And mentally active. This is why it's always good, like to go to circles of knowledge. One thing I've noticed, certain Muslims I've seen, even when they retire, they're always attending circles of knowledge. Some of them start memorizing Quran, because they've been in that habit before. They can continue and that will keep them active, that will keep them engaged. But the person who's sitting at home, they're not used to studying, or they mentally they start shutting down as well. Yeah, sadly, this is a thing with a lot of our aunties, our mothers and our aunties generation. A lot of them, they spend their whole life bringing up their children. Children are grown up, children have left, they're doing their own thing. And they don't have other things to do. They should have things. So to also nurture one's friendships, friendships, social circles, these type of things, so that when you're at that stage, you will have some of these things in place. So this is not something that doctors or psychiatrists will tell you, but this is probably one of the key things, to have socialization, not to be isolated. And we have to make effort in these things, Friendships require work as well. One of the things that Aristotle identified back, one of the ancient philosophers, in one of the key things that makes people happy in life, have good friendships. Yeah, these things require work. I mean, you don't just make good friends by chatting on the internet or having a Facebook friend. Friends are people you spend time with. You go through experiences together, and downs and ups, and you help each other, and you go through that. That's what makes friendships. You don't just make a friend like that. So all of these things are really important to prevent and also to treat. Once someone falls into, say, severe depression, then you need to try to get them, find things to do, stimulate your mind, stimulate your body, become physically active. It's really important. When they're in that stage, it's very hard for them, because one of the things they lack is motivation. This is key feature of depression, lack of motivation. So you have to really, sometimes you have to just force them, look, get up and get out. I'm taking you for a walk. You need to do this, you need to do this. So you force them, but once they start doing it, they will start feeling better. There's a brother I know from Slough, obviously I won't mention his name. A very good, very nice practicing brother, very, you know, and he told me recently when I was with him for couple of months back, he told me, you know, a couple of years back, I was suffering from severe depression. And I heard your talk about this thing, you know, about physically active and things like that. He said, I started going to the gym, just forcing myself to go to the gym. And that made him better, you know. So it's very important. This is simple things are the most important things. What about medication, antidepressant medication? There's no harm in it, you know. I'm going to put myself out for jobs, so I have to be careful here if I say it doesn't work. If I say it doesn't work, I'll be on the streets. So about 15 years ago, they did this massive, I don't know if some of you are in the medical field or dental, that type of thing, you might be familiar with, in the medical field, one of the things they really teach you really well is how to evaluate evidence, you know, scientific evidence and studies. Because you're not going to start, you're messing about with human beings and lives, so you're not going to start giving medications until there's a real strong evidence base, you know? So it's quite an advanced, the statistics and evidence analysis that they teach us in medical school and things like that. Anyway, about 15 years ago, they came up with these new statistical analyses. They call them meta-analysis. And it's old news now, but when they first came out, there was a new development. So it was a statistical technique to take all other studies that have been done, say on the effect of a certain medication. You take all of the studies that have ever been done in every different university or different place, and you do a meta-analysis. You bring all the results together, and you find out, you know, is the medication effective, how effective it is, etc. So they started doing this, they got really excited, they started doing it to all different types of medication, you know, meta-analysis. And so they done one for antidepressants. And what they found is that antidepressants are no better than placebo, which is a sugar, you know, it's a pill with nothing in it. You heard of placebo, I guess, yeah? So placebo is when you give someone a pill, but it's just made of, say, sugar. But you don't tell them that. You say, look, oh yeah, this is for your blood pressure, or this is for cancer or something. They take the pill. Surprisingly enough, a lot of people start getting better, right? Not just for mental illness. You might think for mental illness, yeah, it's obviously psychological, but even for physical illnesses, right? For things like blood pressure, even cancer, you know, any physical illness, you can give people a placebo and they will improve and they will get better, a certain number of them. It's very odd and bizarre, right? But it means that the body has some sort of self-healing capacity and you're somehow triggering that, I guess, you know? So anyway, so this study was done. I remember I was sitting in, and someone was one of the registrar was presenting the study to the study group of doctors and psychiatrists, and basically saying, yeah, well, obviously there was a very uncomfortable silence in the room, right? Because she was telling us antidepressants are one of the main things that psychiatrists use all the time. They're just telling you, like, well, basically it's no better than placebo, right? Now, obviously, since that time, the drug companies have come back with more studies and blah, 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 and different meta-analyses. And they've managed to persuade everyone that actually, no, they do work, yeah? They do work better than placebo. The thing is, with medication, it's always like, is it better than placebo? Because placebo does have an effect. So with any medication, you always measure against placebo, right? If it's no better than placebo, then what's the point? But if it is better, then it's worth taking it. So I think since then, people have sort of come back because drug companies are very powerful. They have a lot of money. The last thing they want to hear is that our antidepressant drugs don't work, right? They're making very big money from things like Prozac, yeah? I mean, you're talking billions, maybe trillions. I don't know how much they're making. Also, a thing that's made us feel a little bit better was even if it's just placebo, it does have an effect. People are getting better. Their symptoms are improving, even if it is placebo, so you don't feel so bad, right, giving the antidepressant medication. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about antidepressant medication. Sorry for those who are taking Prozac, and I might have destroyed the placebo effect there. But no, I mean, I'm being a little bit controversial, but I mean, some people swear by it. Some people take it and they say, I feel so much better. And, fair enough. I mean,
What do you think about medication as a whole? Not just for mental illnesses,
yeah.
for like body pains, headaches, that type of thing. Do you think it's pretty much just placebo and just you're buying into?
No, I don't know. There's a lot of very good medication out there. The problem is, because drug companies are so powerful, there's a lot of rubbish medication as well. Like there's a lot of overuse of medication as well. Like they've put everyone on statins, for example. I've got people that not even have probably high cholesterol, or there's over medication, definitely 100%. A lot of it is used unnecessarily. Some of it doesn't work, but there are also some really good medications out there, and most of them are the ones that have been derived from natural products. So the best painkillers are things like morphine, heroin. They're from the opium. Some of the best heart medications are from the digitalis. Some of you may have foxgloves in your garden. Foxgloves. That's actually where you get digoxin, one of the best heart medications. But yeah, no, I wouldn't put everything aside. There are definitely some good. Paracetamol works for me when I have a headache. That's all I can say. It's quite good for mild to moderate pain. Yeah, so just keeping an eye on the time. What I want to say basically is also social isolation. I'm going to talk about that. We've already mentioned it, but remember, Islam is a deen of jama'ah. Yeah? You're supposed to be, we're supposed to be always getting together, jama'ah, ahl-sunnah wal jama'ah. Jama'ah means to be in the group. And I mentioned there's other ayahs of Quran as well, about mutual, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْمَرْحَمَةِ. تَوَاصَوْا بِالْمَرْحَمَةِ. The tawasu can only happen together. Surah Al Imran finishes, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اصْبِرُوا وَصَابِرُوا وَرَابِطُوا وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ. First Allah says isbiru, which means to have patience, but then he says sabiru, which means you have to do it together. You can't, we have to support one another and try to get this community back together so that we can have that strength. Because in the time of tribulation, it is tough. It's tough for anyone. Yeah, if someone loses someone, a family member, whatever, they suddenly go bankrupt. Tribulations are tough. We can't just say to someone, expect them, the iman is so strong. We have to support each other, remind each other. And that's what the deen is about, So that's a challenge, It's a challenge for our time and our place where we're having the atomization, the breakdown of even the core families now. That's our challenge, sense of purpose is one of the most important things for mental illness, is having sense of purpose. And Islam gives us that sense of purpose, right? So once again, turning back to the deen to find what is our purpose? Exactly. To come closer to Allah, to know Allah, right? For the Englishman, his purpose is his work. That's why after they retire, they fall into depression, right? But it gives them a sense of purpose when they're doing it. That's why they're so devoted to it. Yeah, and finally, and this might sound strange coming from a sheikh, do things you enjoy. Yeah, I know Maulvis and sheikhs don't normally tell you to do things you enjoy. Yeah, I don't know about Shaykh Thaqib, but I remember we were joking once with Shaykh Thaqib when we were younger. We were saying, you have all these 40 hadiths, compile 40 hadiths about different things. So let's compile 40 hadiths of doing things that you enjoy. Someone needs to do that. I mean, because Islam is not all doom and gloom. Islam is a very cheerful religion, There's a lot of things you enjoy, like, Imam al-Ghazali says, eating too much is bad unless you're eating with your brothers or sisters. Then you can eat as much as you like. In fact, you should break your fast if you're doing a nafal fast. If you've got brothers or sisters to eat with, there's so many good things in the hadith as well, So it's important, to maintain mental, that's what I said earlier about getting hobbies. There's good sunnah hobbies as well. Islam doesn't say that you can't enjoy yourself. Archery, swimming, all these things, gardening. I recently got into gardening. It's, why are you laughing? Things like that, they can be quite spiritual but enjoyable, and you can get a good thing out of it, Attend circles of knowledge and dhikr without even, goes without saying, yeah? Have a regular circles, like, alhamdulillah, obviously you people probably do. Yeah, but it's so important, think about when you retire, have these regular circles of dhikr, knowledge. This is one of the amazing things Sidi Uthman will tell you as well when we were in Syria. The Syrian people were such poor people. It's a poor country, before the war and everything. But they were, the people I met, they were happy people. And one of the things I saw about them, they would always go to these gatherings, of dhikr. Even there might not be talib al-ilm or anything like that, just ordinary people, They would be in the masjids, they would have circles of dhikr, and you listen to the sheikh doing a talk, and they would give food to people, and they would sing nasheeds, and they were poor people, but they were happy. There was literally, this was very odd to me because I travel around quite a few Muslim countries, and one thing you always see about the young people there, they always want to come to the West. Yeah? They always want to come to the West, they want to get the visa. Even the Talib al-Ilm, they would say, we want to go to the West to do da'wah. We want to go to America to do da'wah. We're thinking, why we got people there to do da'wah, why do you want to come to do da'wah over there? But honestly, this is honest truth. There was people in Syria, one young, he was Talib al-Ilm, and one young, he wasn't Talib al-Ilm, he was just a normal professional. I said to them, yeah, you should come to England. We'll organize it for you and everything. Both of them, at separate times, they said to me, why would we want to come to England? Why would we want to come to England? I was amazed, honestly. I never heard people from those countries saying they don't want to come to the West. But alhamdulillah, this was the Shami people, And one of the things that you see in that country, in Damascus, they had so many ulama, very unlike any other city I've been to. And a lot of these circles, So the ultimate purpose of the human being is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we have that purpose and that mission, we have got a purpose in our life. You understand? And this is where the circles of tazkiyah, tasawwuf, getting closer to Allah, all of these come in. And I'm just going to finish by just touching on anxiety a little bit. One of the greatest causes of anxiety is fear of death. Right? For non-Muslims, is fear of death. But our deen teaches us that the true believers, they long forward to death. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Kahf, for example, وَمَنْ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا. Whoever looks forward to the meeting with his Lord. So the state of the true believers is not to fear death, but to actually long forward for death. Because why? You're returning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam al-Ghazali has a famous chapter in his, Remembrance of Death, which is in English that people can read. One of the excellent books about remembering death. The Prophet ﷺ said, أَكْثِرُوا ذِكْرَكُمْ حَادِمَ اللَّذَّاتِ. You should remember very often the destroyer of pleasures. So remember death. Every day we should be reflecting on our death. Not in a depressing way. Yeah, not in a depressing way, but in a way that roots us back to reality and makes us ultimately happier and content with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah, we'll stop there for the talk, and we'll open it up for questions and discussion, inshallah, which I think will be more important. Yeah, I'll take some of the written questions quickly, shall I? Or what do you want me to do? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So we go for the written ones first, yeah, because people have taken the time to write them down. We should answer them, inshallah. What key question about ourselves, our childhood and upbringing are essential to address and work through before getting married? That's an interesting question. Look, people's childhood experiences and everything, they have a massive impact on the rest of your life. We know that now. This is one of the strongest evidence they have in the field of mental health now, is that early childhood experiences, and even very early, even stuff that happens to you when you're a toddler, it can affect the rest of your life and your personality and your mental health. So growing up in a loving, caring environment is very important, for children. And this is once again, I'll touch back on, the screens, because it's so important. If your child is in front of a screen, they're not in a loving, nurturing environment. Because what they're seeing is not loving, nurturing environment. I mean, they're seeing YouTubers, weird people, right? Have you seen some of these people? They're weirdos, they're doing monologues into the camera. The child's brain, the child is an imitator. A child is a copycat. That's what they literally are. And the younger the child, the more of an imitator they are. They will copy what they see. That is a fact about children. And you can't blame a child when they grow up and they're 15, 16 and they're acting like people that are YouTubers. Right? If they've been watching YouTube since they were 5. Because that's how literally their brains are growing and copying everything they see. So may Allah make it easy. I know it's not easy, but it's something we have to take seriously, We have to think about ways to limit screen time, obviously, And as I say, the younger they are, the less. Up to the age of 7, 8, they shouldn't really have any screen time at all, And even the more you can delay it, the better it is. And the less they have, the less is better. But I'm not answering the question because it's a slightly difficult question. I think it shouldn't prevent you getting married, Everyone has some issues or things, probably, So, you shouldn't prevent you from getting married because marriage itself can be very therapeutic and it's half your deen, So I don't think we should think, oh, we've got issues, we shouldn't get married. So, yeah. What are the Islamic guidelines in processing and dealing with grief to prevent it from locking into our mental state and causing issues later down the line? Yeah, so grief, I mean, it's a natural thing, it's a natural process. And people have to go through grief. One of the things, obviously, we have is ta'ziyah. So when someone dies, some Muslims and converts, they've said this, we don't realize how powerful it is. Now, when we have someone who dies, everyone comes to your house, for 3 days. Some people might think this is it's not helpful even, having all your relatives coming, people you've never seen for years, hundreds of people coming to your house for ta'ziyah to give condolences, but it's a very powerful thing. In those first 3 days after someone's got a bereavement, it's actually very, very powerful and helpful, to see all these people. Sorry, I know I'm not answering fully some of these questions, but I just want to say a couple of things here and there. But you don't need to process and deal with grief. It's a natural process. Yeah. So as long as we're naturally healthy and we've got some support around us, inshallah, you get over the grief. You read your Quran, do your aura, do your dhikr. Grief will pass. It's a natural, normal thing, to grieve for a while. As you know, Islam says you can only grieve for 3 days, unless it's a wife grieving for her husband. Yeah, then she's allowed a longer period, up to 4 months, etc. But for anyone else, 3 days, you're not allowed to grieve after 3 days in Islam. No matter who it is. So it means we just have to, turn back to our dhikr and Allah and our salah. These are the things. I mean, the 5 daily prayers are so powerful. If we just done our 5 daily prayers properly, I don't think we would have any of these problems, but we don't do our prayers properly. So our 5 daily prayers is the ultimate protection. Yeah, inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar, and the prayer actually prevents you from doing bad deeds as well. Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. This is why I personally said to my children, my children, mashallah, they're all grown up now, but I told them all when they got to that age of 14, 15, I said, look, just one thing, I'm going to give you just one thing I want you to do. Apart from that, I don't care what you do. Just keep your 5 daily prayers. Because literally, the 5 daily prayers will stop you from doing haram. If you try to do haram and you're doing your 5 daily prayers, there's a thing, what they call cognitive dissonance there. You one thing has to go or another. You can't do both. So the salah will protect us. It's the greatest protection. But do the salah properly, Take your time. Remember Allah. Not do salah and you're thinking about everything else but Allah. Yeah, salah is about remembering Allah. Aqim as-salata li dhikri. Establish the prayer for my remembrance. La muta'lil. It tells us the actual reason for the salah is to remember Allah. If we're doing salah and we're not remembering Allah, that's a problem. Yeah. Why do we mentally and emotionally deal with the current genocide in Palestine? I think we've touched upon that already. Yeah. For those who don't have deep-rooted causes of anxiety and depression, such as childhood traumas, etc., who don't have deep-rooted causes of anxiety and depression, increasing in one's spiritual practice and ibadah, a sound technique in helping restore any anxious or depressed states. If someone's suffering from depression or anxiety and you say to them, increase your ibadah, I'm not sure if that is the best advice for someone in that state, because it's like, I don't know. I think the best thing is to keep your wird, keep your level. All of us should have a certain level of what we call wird, so your 5 daily prayers are part of that. Your Qiyamul Layl, if you do that, is part of that. Your wird after Fajr is part of that. Your Quran every day is part of that. Have a baseline, don't do less than that. And establish the baseline, something small. Remember the Prophet ﷺ said, doing ibadah, even a small ibadah, do it regularly is better than doing a lot. So, in Ramadan, we become super mu'min, everyone doing that thousands of nafal. But what is better is do something regular, what some of the Sufis, they said, if you have a rock, and if you have a rock and you have a drop of water, drip, 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 yeah? You come back after a few months, you'll see there'll be a groove in the rock. Yeah? But if you get all that water in one go in a massive bucket and you splash it on the rock, what will happen to the rock? Nothing. Yeah? So you need the drip. You need the steady, regular, establish a baseline of your dhikr. Even if it's not that much, make it a baseline, but never let it go. No matter if you're busy, stressed, tired, never let that baseline go. If you have to, because obviously sometimes something might happen, do the qada of it, so you don't let it go, the baseline. And then build on the baseline. Slowly add something else. Okay, I'm doing this now. Let me add another dhikr or another page of Quran. Build it slowly, but only establish yourself at every point. Don't get over enthusiastic. I'm going to do loads of ibadat and then a few months later you're burnt out, sitting down, not even doing your fard. Yeah. What role does our temperament play in our mental states, and how do we go about learning more about our temperament and changing our states by use of foods and other resources? No, this is a really good point. This was what I was saying earlier about the traditional wisdom in our Islamic medicine, which is derived from the Greek. They were very much into, what type of foods can help, what type of diet. So if someone is severely depressed, they have this melancholia. To be honest, this is not my specialist, so I can't give much advice about this right now. But melancholia, I believe, was they considered to be too much black bile. So there's certain foods, certain drinks you can have that will help balance that, and it will help with that depression. So I'm not a specialist in that traditional medicine, so I can't comment. But you can find, there are some books, but obviously go to reliable sources, and you can find out some of those things are important. They're very important. We need more people specialize in that. Ideally, people who specialize with modern medicine and that, but that's going to be rare. But there is a lot of work needs to be done, My father passed away 4 or 5 years ago, but every time I think about it, see his picture, I get very upset and can't deal with it. How do I get over this? Look, I mean, obviously to some extent it's natural, yeah? When the Prophet ﷺ used to remember Khadija, he used to feel sad, right? Even many years later. So I'm not saying, we have hearts of stone. Yeah, we don't have hearts of stone. When the Prophet ﷺ, his son Ibrahim died, he was weeping, and one Sahabi, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, even said to him, Ya Rasulullah, even you? In other words, they were surprised he's crying because his son died. Like, shouldn't he have trust in Allah? Or but the Prophet ﷺ said, no, this is the nature. I'm just paraphrasing, This is the mercy that Allah's put in the hearts. We're going to miss him. You're going to miss him. You're going to see him back on the Day of Judgment, but even now you miss him from day to day. There's nothing wrong with that. So I don't think that's anything specific I can say about that, apart from what we've already said about just generally reading Quran and doing the awrad and things like that, I'll be guided by the brothers. I know there's probably other questions as well, but I also wanted to give Sidi Uthman a chance to say something if he had anything you might have some cropped up in your mind to say. You sure? No, sir.
Barakallahu for coming down.
Barakallahu fikum.
A lot of benefit, mashallah, you've been saying to us and also reminding us as well of the
Jazakallah khair.
practices and the sunnah practices. And also the common sense ones as well, getting out, taking activity.
Yes.
I think probably adding to that, I think nature and environment is also very beneficial and helpful when you're in touch with that also as well. My question is seher something that's associated with depression and anxiety as well?
Oh, very good question. I'm surprised no one's asked that already about sahar, right? Black magic. Is that associated? In fact, Sidi Uthman was telling me on the way here, apparently there's this one notorious jinn in Luton that's in everyone's houses. Now, the relationship between jinn and depression and anxiety and mental illness generally is very complex. The reason is because obviously we know that jinn are there. All of us have a jinn attached to us, qareen. It's even mentioned in the Quran, the qareen that will manifest on the Day of Judgment. Each of us have that companion jinn that's sort of trying to make us do bad things, etc. And we have angels as well trying to encourage us to do good things. So, can black magic cause depression or anxiety? If that's one question. What do we know from the Quran and the Sahih Hadith? What can black magic cause? Correct? Yeah. So we know that's a fact. It can cause relationship breakdown. What else? It can cause illusions. That's what the Musa and Fir'aun, yeah? The the magicians, they can bewitch your eyes. You can see something that's not really there. That's what they did, the magic. It can, and from the Sunnah, we know that it can cause some sort of mental disturbance from that magic that happened to the Prophet ﷺ, to the point where in some of the seerah, I mentioned that he was like either hallucinating or there were, he was, until he was given then the cure, which was Surah Al-Falaq and An-Nas. So it can affect you mentally as well, the magic. Whether it can cause specifically depression or anxiety, I don't know, frankly. There's a lot of stuff written in the certain Muslim books, and some of they're quite well known in English as well, Islamic prophetic medicine, things like that, However, my research has led me to be a little bit skeptical, because when the Muslims first expanded very early under Sahaba, they took over a lot of Christian lands where there were a lot of Christian communities. And in the Christian communities, there's a lot of exorcism. Christians, they really believe in demon possession and exorcism, because it's even in the Bible about Jesus casting out demons and things like that. So within the Christian tradition, it's very established. You have a demon possession, you do exorcism, you get rid of the demons. From my research, has led me to have a strong strong suspicion that the early Muslims were very influenced by those Christian traditions of exorcism. And I'll tell you the reason for this, and I know it's controversial, and I've discussed it with other scholars, is because I think if exorcism was such an important thing, I think we would have seen more in the Prophet ﷺ's life and in the Sahaba, in the Khulafa Rashidun, for example. I have not come across reliable reports of the Prophet ﷺ or the Khulafa Rashidun performing exorcisms on people to get rid of jinns because they're ill. One of the hadiths that some people use is one you may have heard of, is when the lady who had epilepsy. She used to have seizures, and she came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she said to the Prophet, make dua for me because when I have these seizures. And he said to her, if you want, I will make dua for Allah to make you better. But if you want to have patience, sabr, you will get your reward. And she said, Ya Rasulullah, I will have sabr in that case. And except just make dua that my aura doesn't become uncovered when I have a seizure or a fit. So some people use this as an evidence of a sort of exorcism thing. But for me, in fact, it proves the opposite. Because if this was actually a jinn possession case, why would the Prophet ﷺ say to her, just have patience about it? Surely he would have got rid of the bad jinn straight away. For me, that indicates that epilepsy is a physical illness, because as we know, if you have a physical illness, it's a kafara, it's a purification if you have sabr. Those are obviously famous prophets, they had physical illnesses and they had sabr, and physical illness is a purification, So that's my opinion about it personally. There is, when people are ill, they're unwell, obviously the jinn can have more influence on them. Like all of us have jinn, but if you're mentally unwell, you're fragile, you're perhaps more susceptible to jinn, waswasa and things like that, Yeah.
Unfortunately, we kind of run out of time. So, inshallah, Shaykh Ridhwan will try to arrange another session shortly. We'll try to, unfortunately, we won't be able to cover, he wasn't able to cover most of the things that were intended. So, inshallah, we'll liaise with him and inshallah set up maybe another session, maybe on this topic or associated to it, and maybe other topics. So there's opportunity again to do this. And also there'll be something coming, of course, on temperament. That'll be coming really soon. So this is all part of, as you know, the Prophetic Hub initiative around health and wellness. So inshallah, we'll try to do more events and things around these subjects. So what I would ask, we're going to pray Maghrib now, inshallah, so you're welcome to say pray Maghrib with us. So I'm going to ask Sidi Uthman to finish with a Fatiha for us. So for those who may not know, so I said earlier that Shaykh Ridhwan was our first teacher. So
that's official now. We can't change that.
I don't want to relieve or reveal how old we all are, but Sidi Uthman, so without him there would be no fountain. So the fountain and everything. So we knew him from I think 98 when we were in university. So we know this would say he introduced us to Shaykh Ridhwan and Shaykh Dr, and we had the teachers from Dimishq and from Tarim and the like. The fountain and the institute itself, everything was through him. So everything that we've achieved or we've done, inshallah, the reward goes back to him.
Inshallah, mashallah.
So all I ask is for Sidi Uthman to just Fatiha to finish.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق وخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق وهادي إلى صراطك مستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره مقدار العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة. بسم الله
Really sorry for the questions we couldn't answer, but yeah.
Inshallah, we'll set something up fairly soon. Inshallah, we'll try to give it a bit more time and attention. Whether that's in a more formal classroom setting or something like this, we'll discuss with Shaykh Ridhwan. We may, do something a bit more.
Maybe a webinar even.
Or webinar
just for the
or
question
Inshallah,
discussion.
We'll keep you posted.